Hello and welcome to this telesummit on feminism as a sustainability tool. I'm Jenny Lamorgan. I'm a social entrepreneur and owner of greenwomanstore.com, where we enjoy creating educational tools like this telesummit on topics important to us as women. Feminism and sustainability are two collective quests that touch every aspect of our lives. Feminism has always brought hope, a lot of hard work, and truth to whatever issue it touches, and we'll talk about the important role that women and feminism are playing in real, lasting, and global sustainability, particularly today in the farming communities. Our goal is to bring you hope and tools for the future. And now I'd like to introduce you to our guest. I'm excited to be here with a woman whose life has been devoted to raising women's voices in agriculture. Denise Obrien is the founder of Women, Food, and Agriculture Network. It's a community of women in sustainable agriculture. Denise grew up in Iowa and attended college there. She lobbied with the Iowa Farm Unity Coalition, and she was president of the National Family Farm Coalition. She was also an advisor to the USDA in Jalalabad, Afghanistan, and she received the 2005 Practical Farmers of Iowa Sustainable Agriculture Award. She has also received the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Iowa Farmers Union and the Athena Award from the Atlantic Iowa Chamber of Commerce. In 2000, Denise was inducted into Iowa's Women's Hall of Fame. Congratulations, Denise.
Thank you.
That's really an accomplishment. Thank you. And Denise joined us for our Lean Into Green podcast series, and this time she's back with some more case studies and stories to inspire us and educate us about women in farming. Welcome to our telesummit on feminism and sustainability, Denise.
Oh, thank you, Jenny. It's a pleasure to be here.
I really want to learn more about women in farming. I get so much on Facebook, and I share it too, that women are just really stepping up to the plate as far as changing our food systems and getting into the nitty-gritty of what it takes to do all of that. And I'm so excited for the work that you do, but I want to know more about it. So I'm not a farmer, and I know that some of our listeners may be, and some may not be, and some may be just ready to step in. So I'm hoping to learn more, and also for you to inspire us with your stories. I know you have a lot of them. So let's start with telling us about the Women, Food, and Agriculture Network. Why did you feel the need to begin linking women with each other? And I know you also link women with resources and legislators.
Yes. Well, I was privileged to marry a farmer, and that's how I entered into farming, and that was nearly 40 years ago. And so I say it was a privilege because it's hard to get into agriculture if you're not born into it or marry into it. I have many women friends that have bought land and started farming and had a strong desire to do it, but I took the easy route and found someone and fell in love and became a farmer. So I was really fortunate for that. So when I started farming in the late 1970s, I was totally engaged in learning how to farm because I did not grow up on a farm, and so during the late 1970s, my husband taught me how to drive a tractor and to plant crops and to take care of animals and livestock like cows and pigs. And we had a typical Iowa farm. And in the process of learning, of learning from him, I learned the language of agriculture, which is a totally different type of language when you talk about weather and soil and livestock, fertility, and all of those things. And so so I was kind of really isolated in learning, and then we started our family. And then in the 1980s, there was a very critical time that happened. It was a structural adjustment, what I call in our country, when the farming communities in rural America was turned upside down with a different economic structure. What I mean by that is that there a lot of things were introduced during that time, like interstate banking. Land values were really high, interest rates were really high, and it was very similar to the mortgage crisis that we went to several years ago. That the land was overvalued and the interest rates were high, and there was no way that farmers could pay back their debt. And so during the 1980s, I started meeting a lot of women throughout Iowa who were calling attention to the farm, what we call now the farm crisis. And during that time, it was a dark period, I think, in that so many families were going through horrible readjustments to to a lack of income, a lack of a farm, and or a livelihood. And so women went off the farm to take on jobs to be able to pay for health insurance, to put groceries on the table, which seems ironic that farmers couldn't be able to put groceries on their tables. So I met many women, and I would say, what do you do? And they say, oh, I'm a farmer's wife. And I'd say, well, what do you do during the day? Or, what is your day like? Well, I get up and I milk the cows, or I feed the pigs, or, I go for machinery parts, I fix machinery, I drive machinery. And I said, well, that sounds like a farmer to me. And they say, oh, no, I'm a farmer's wife. And many times when I was out there, I thought after I had learned my farming, I thought I could call myself a farmer. I felt like I could. I'd learned the kind of the ropes of farming, and so I would, when I'd be introducing myself, I would say I was a farmer, and women would say to me, "Oh, you call yourself a farmer?" And I said, "Well, yes." And that conversation would ensue about what we do during that 24 hours that we're given in a day. So not many women called themselves farmers in the 70s and 80s, and really felt like they were farmers' wives, and yet they kept the books and they did all the work on the farm. And so it was one of those things that, as the farm crisis evolved and the women were pointing out that there were problems, the men kind of tried to hide. And by that I mean the men thought if they worked harder and kept their nose to the ground and just work, that everything would be all right. They were in denial, and they just would not face the fact that there were, that things were going terribly, terribly wrong. And so women stepped forward and said, we've got to do something. And so that's when I noticed that, well, I also read a book, and this is a good, I think there's still copies available of it, but Carolyn Sachs is a rural sociologist at Penn State, and she wrote a book called The Invisible Farmer, and I found that on a bookshelf someplace and brought it home to read, and it's like, oh, this is it, this is The Invisible Farmer. The women really add to the economic well-being of the family unit on a farm, but their participation is not included, and so many women, were just that invisible farmer, definitely. And then I found another book. It was called North Country, Iowa, and it was about how the women brought the farming community, the farming income to the farm family by selling her chickens and eggs, and how the egg income was a very large part of families being able to put groceries on the table during the 40s and 50s, and which is ironic now because egg money, many young women are starting, and I shouldn't just say young, many beginning farmers are starting farms, and eggs are their main economic contribution. And if you go to if you go to the store now and you see how much eggs are, and you see organic eggs and that, well, these women, many women are selling direct to consumers now because of the whole industry of eggs. Everybody knows that you don't know quite what you're getting when you go to the grocery store. So buying fresh and buying local is really helping to sustain the income of farmers in Iowa. So it's sort of gone full circle in a way, and women never felt themselves feminists, and many wouldn't call themselves feminists now, but they certainly carried the family through many difficult times and things, and felt very much part of the farming situation. So that was my first experience, and I have to say too, you'll get a laugh out of this. I think I always did. When I first started farming, there were women's auxiliary organizations that mostly women were used to sell the products that the farmers were raising. So milk and eggs, and milk and pork and beef. And so when I had been gone from Iowa for a while, came back and married my husband, and there were these organizations called, and this is so awful, the Dairy Maids, the Cowbells, the Porkettes, and it was appalling to me that women would join organizations with those names. They were so demeaning, and they've since gotten rid of those names, and it's not anything that I had anything to do with. I think it was very apparent that those were awful names too, and those women marketed the products. So they were the women that got the coffee and cookies for the meetings and things like that, and were part of the marketing strategy of farm products. So, we evolved through the 80s. In the 90s, I was doing some international work and seeing what was going on with women landowners, women who don't own land, and finding out that nearly 75% of the produce of the food grown in the world was grown by women, and without any recognition of that. And of course, in the United States, the face of a farmer is very male. It continues to be, and maybe someday that will change by all the efforts that are going on. But so Women, Food, and Agriculture started and our first mission statement was to link and amplify women's voices, to find, a place where we could be at the decision-making table. And we embraced policies that would be progressive policies that would include women. And so and they weren't all just about farming policies, but equity with, pay equity and various insurance equity. It seemed like Iowa women were paying higher rates of insurance, and that so there were issues that went beyond just agricultural issues. And as we've evolved into the 2000s, you can see the farming vertical integration that happened in the farming, where corporations basically own everything from the beginning to the end, and farmers have become the workers of the farms rather than the farmers themselves. You can see all the data and scientific information we have now that the type of food we've been eating over the last 30 years has really done us a disservice, and we have all sorts of food issues with our health because of the highly processed foods that we've been putting into our bodies over these years. So, and women are the basic buyers of food, purchasers of food in their homes, and have been, again, at the forefront of raising the alarms about genetically modified organisms, genetically modified corn and beans, and it's a never-ending battle, Jenny, to have a voice loud enough that it can be heard in the din of all the money that the corporations have to be able to try to shush us, try to quiet us. It's very disconcerting to me at times. So,
right, that's the lobbying efforts.
Yes.
But we're also beginning to see corporations being pressured now by the consumers, by these many organizations that are they're organizing us through these petition drives and that kind of thing. And I'm really seeing results with that. So I'm hoping that that's reaching into the farming community too. I see it now with the GMOs, certainly. It's beginning with fracking. That's an issue too. I don't know if fracking is impacting agricultural lands.
Oh, absolutely. Yes,
Yeah,
it is.
and the water supply, I'm sure.
Yes, yes,
So,
yes. And women now are, at the forefront of these issues. They always have been at the forefront of the cross-cutting. They've been at the front lines of sounding the alarms because they see what happens to their children, their families, their communities, and that's, we have to be ever vigilant to be, on guard, or, to be helping people understand that there are some real issues out there, and they are making an impact now. There are days that I get very discouraged, but then I talk to women. I had a woman call me last night. One of the programs, Women Food and Agriculture, has 3 program areas, and one is beginning farmers. And I've been a mentor over the years to many young women coming into farming, and it's just the best thing in my life. It's so wonderful to have these young women come to the farm and learn and go on to become farmers themselves, or if they decide they don't want to be a farmer, that they're involved in really pertinent issues involving food and sustainability. But I had a call last night from this woman who, one of the other, I'll go back, I'm sorry. The other program is Plate to Politics, where Women's Food and Agriculture Network encourages women to become involved in very local politics, from very local politics to very to national politics. It's one of those things that, again, we really are sorely missing when you look at pictures of boards of directors or of Congress or of our state legislators. We're gaining, but we're not 50%, and we need to we need to encourage more people, and so Play to Politics is one, and then Women Caring for the Land is the third one, which helps women landowners, and women own nearly 50% of the land in Iowa and in most states, because women live longer and inherit land, and but men continue to make decisions about what's done with that land. So bringing women together to make a stronger voice and to learn about natural resource and conservation management, and that has strengthened women to make their own decisions and demand that we have conservation efforts on the farmland that's being so degraded out here. It's just disgusting. Basically in Iowa we mine the soil, just like it's above ground and everybody can see it, but nobody realizes that that's exactly what we're doing and that. But anyway, back to my story about last night. This woman called me and she said, Denise, she said, I just, I really love WFAN. They helped me get my farming together, and I'm going to retire next week, and I'm going to raise my goats, but I want to be more involved. And she said, I just met this woman in my county who's a county supervisor, and we just hit it off. She was working at the library, and so she came in contact with a lot of people, and so she talked about supporting this woman, and Iowa just elected its first female senator ever. She's not a feminist, unfortunately. She's a very conservative woman. But Kate, who was talking to me last night, really felt encouraged to go talk to her about women in agriculture and Women's Food and Agriculture Network. And I said, well, Kate, that's great. I couldn't do it, but that's really good that you want to do that. And she said, well, this Plate to Politics, she says, I never thought I would want to run for an office, and I really don't. But the other part of that is that we can really support strong women who are in politics. And as Kate said, she said, I think I have too much baggage for Iowa. She says, I'm a radical feminist lesbian, so I'm not sure that I would get too far. And although I think she's undermining herself by thinking that, but she wants to help women, and encourage women to run for political office. And it was such a pleasure to hear her call me and to hear her voice and to be talking this over with her, because it's something she may not have done 5 years ago before coming in contact with a group of women who she felt supported what her ideals were.
And she sounds like she's strong and feels like she's also among other strong women, and I think that's always inspiring.
Yes. Oh,
you know,
yes, it is.
yeah,
Yes.
that's really important. And it sounds too like from your stories about the books that you came into contact with in the 80s and the 90s and the 70s that, you know, feminism really did come into the farming community, and just like it did everywhere else, you know. Yes. You pick up a book here, you pick up a book there, and pretty soon you find out you're not alone. Mm-hmm. And then you have permission to do what it is that you want to do, and that really is what feminism is, honoring everybody's passions and getting the world's needs met that way, if we could all do what it is we want to do.
Yes.
So I know. And I really get the feel, of course I want it to happen on a larger scale, but I do get the feel that women are changing the face of farming.
Mm-hmm.
And
oh, yes.
Can you make that more real for me?
Yeah. Well, and Jenny, I think the thing that women who are going into farming, and I think the demographics from the USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture, will back me up on this, are going into smaller farm sizes. They're growing food for their, to eat, not commodities like what is all over Iowa with corn and soybeans, and Kansas with wheat, and those sort of things. Women are growing food for their communities, and they're developing small livestock farms, and they're doing goats and sheep and dairy. A lot of them are starting dairies and becoming cheese makers and artisan cheese makers and studying this. And it's in my own particular case, in the last few years, I've put up a high tunnel, which is an unheated greenhouse, and I've been taking classes. Even with me knowing farming all these years that I still have a lot to learn. And this winter, I've been learning how to utilize my high tunnel, which is an unheated greenhouse. And in an environment like Iowa, where we have winter for so long, this to extend the season, to be able to sell produce into December and start in March. Last year, for the first time ever, I grew food for 9 months of the year, and
goodness. Wow.
I'm selling right now. I'm selling spinach, and I started a couple weeks ago in early March, and that was unheard of just a few years ago. So. These tools that we're learning to use, and that's what's exciting. There's young. My husband and I have waited a long time for people to join us in the type of farming we chose long time ago, and it's now happening. And so that makes me understand, one, how long it takes to make change, and two, that change does eventually come, but. We're in the western part of Iowa, and it's a pretty conservative area, and it's big farming. And now this year, for the first time this winter, there's a number of beginning farmers that are in a 50-mile radius, and we're starting to have potlucks together, and it's just absolutely wonderful. We've been waiting a long time to be able to do this, and it's and most of the couples are young couples, and they're all sorts of coming from all sorts of backgrounds. And a few months ago, my husband and I were coming home from one of the potlucks, and he says, "Do you feel old?" And I said, "Well," or "Did you feel old?" And I said, "Well, for a fleeting moment, but we were talking about farming and sustainability and social justice and things that just made us excited." And so I forget about age, and it's a good thing. I think it's really wonderful to have that broad intergenerational relationship that we can learn from each other and support each other in what we're doing. So it's fun.
And feed each other's souls. And that's been kind of a common message on this telesummit, is that women that started doing this work in the 70s, they're actually, they've gone through those long periods of is it ever going to change? Is it ever going to change? And they're seeing the fruition of all their efforts coming, not only nationally but globally, as the world is changing right now. And certainly agriculture is being focused on globally for so many reasons,
Oh, heavens, yes, yes.
I know. So you're really in the spotlight, I think, right now. And I think I'm really pleased that this is a place that women are stepping up and making some change, because I think it's a really powerful place to be right now.
Well, it is, and one thing I think about, in the wider world, people don't have a lot of control about their lives, and they have jobs maybe they like or don't like, but they live in places maybe they like or don't like, whatever. But what you put in your body is control. What you feed, what you feed yourselves and your families and your communities, that you can, at this point in time, continue to, and I hope forever, put what we want to in our own bodies and nourish them. And I see that as a very feminist issue as well. It's having that control, and we can either grow it ourselves, and if we don't have the capacity to grow it, it's becoming more and more available to buy our produce from female faces, and it doesn't always have to be females. I don't want to exclude the men at all, but it's certainly, we're feeding the earth, and this whole, several years ago I was came in contact with a number of eco-feminists that were talking about how the ill treatment of the earth is very parallel to the ill treatment of women in domestic violence. And you can make these parallels just so, they're so, visual. I mean, it's just, you can see as we tear apart the earth and we wreak havoc, and then we don't treat women very well, that we've got to get away from that, and we've got to start taking care of things, and women are stepping up to the plate to do that. And I see so many women and that grew up in an urban area, and many farmers are this way, that they didn't grow up on a farm, didn't grow up in a rural area, but something captured their soul, and they want to be farmers, and it's just. And it's a struggle. It's not an easy job at all. It's a very physical job. It's very long days, and especially when we have, long summer, the mornings are early and the evenings are late, and it's every day pretty much of the week. And that's why I look so forward to winter, is that is my rest time. So, there's many reasons to come into agriculture, and I think it's really a very strong basis for feminism. I just feel that, it's a grounded place where I'll repeat myself, where you can have some kind of control of how your daily life is.
And you talked about having control over our food supply and doing it through growing our own and also local farmers markets and kind of thing. Can you talk about CSA farms? I believe you and your husband run a CSA farm.
Yes, we're starting up the season, and many people are understanding about CSAs now. So a CSA is a community-supported agriculture, and it's where people buy a membership to a farm and then get a box or a bag of produce every week for a certain number of weeks. Now ours will start up in another month in April, the end of April, and we'll go through Thanksgiving. And so when you belong to a CSA, the basis is that the consumer, the eaters, are helping to share the risk of the farmer. So the risk being the weather, the insects, the disease, and those sort of things. And so by paying in advance or making payments throughout the year, then or the growing season anyway, then consumers help the farmer to be able to pay for things as they go. And the traditional way of farming has always been a high capitalization in the spring, where you go in and put all your farm up for collateral, and in the fall, once the crops are sold, you go in and pay off your loans and things. And it's a cycle of debt, because it's one of those things, given the risk that there is in farming, it's not always possible to pay that debt back. So the consumer shares in the risk, and it works. It's worked. It's been in the United States now since the late 80s, and there's varying models of CSAs, and it just ours. I really love our members. They just they bring us, they give us hugs, they bring us bread, they give us encouragement when we're just like, oh, we don't want to do this anymore in the hot heat of July, and why are we doing this sort of thing? The rewards are the relationships with our customers, with our members, and the caring. We've created a broader extended family who care about food, and who are really care about the earth and want to be able to do the best that they can while with their time that they are on the earth. So it's a good model for knowing who your farmer is, and taking part in that, and in the whole farming into the farming model. But some farms also have volunteers come out to the farm, and usually farms are always open for people to come and visit and those sort of things. So it's really important, as we get more urbanized in our country, that people know where their food comes from. And there's been a time, and there still is a time, when people don't know where their food comes from. But this is an active way of trying to reverse that trend.
I think it's wonderful. Some of the booths at the stands at the farmers market, they'll let you know that they're a CSA farm, and you can sign up right there at the farmers market. Others, yes. I know out here we have the boxes of food delivered to our local schools, and the families pick them up right there at school when they're picking up their kids. Oh, wow. Oh, that's great. Yeah. There's lots of ways to do it and get involved, and I didn't know about that piece where we're actually helping to share that risk that the farmer yes. takes, and to break that cycle of debt. Those are important pieces. Additional reasons besides yes. the benefit to the family to eat seasonally. So
good food, yes. Mm-hmm.
Now, your website says that women currently own more than half of the rented farmland in the United States. Can you talk to us about what that means? What is rented farmland?
Yes, well, there was a time in our country where the majority of the land that was farmed by owners. So the farmer and his wife, or the farmer, her and her husband, owned the land and went out and farmed the land. And then as the whole model of farming changed, as equipment made labor less necessary, and as things were put in an assembly line fashion, in a way, became more efficient and everything, and then there were chemicals introduced to make time in the field less spent. So labor was reduced drastically. In a lot of ways, that's a really good thing. And so and the traditional way of farmland to be passed on to families as our parents died, and that was that the siblings, or the sons and daughters of the farmer and his wife would the sons and daughters would inherit the land. And it used to be that people continued to farm, and then people were leaving the farm to go to the urban areas. Some people didn't want to stay on the farm. There's just different reasons why people left. In the 80s, it was an economic reason. People didn't want to farm and couldn't. It wasn't profitable. And so land became owned by families, or continued to be owned by families, but fewer people farmed the land. And so the neighbors would begin to rent land and use that land to be able to scale up their farming. And when I talk about this, it's mostly about commodity farming, like corn and soybeans and wheat and cotton and that. And in California, of course, it's a whole different set of crops and things. So anyway, then this transition, the people who own the land now, who have owned it for a long time, we're coming to this point in our country where there's going to be this incredible transfer of wealth. As the baby boomers, go into retirement and pass on, and that there's this, wealth that's been accumulated, and just not only in land, but in, businesses and things all throughout the country. So land has been passed. Women live longer than men. It's been that way for a long time, and may always stay that way. I don't know. And so women have inherited land as their spouses have passed away. And so the statistics right now are that women own over 50% of the land, and they and that switch I was talking about, where farmers were the operators of the land that they owned, it's now the farmers who operate the equipment pretty much don't own the land but rent the land from many landlords, and that's where we stand now. Many women own land, and men basically rent the land, and some women have been, how can I say this, have been kind of disrespected about what their feelings were for the land, and they would say, well, I want this, I want these trees planted, or I want this grass here, or I want to plant prairie, or I want to do this stuff. And the men who are renting the land say, oh, you can't do that. That doesn't fit with the program. You can't do that. They go to the government agencies and they'd say, this is what I want to do with my land. And the agencies used to say, it's changing now, that, oh, you can't do that. It's all about corn and beans. It's nothing about anything else. And so when Women Through Agriculture started the Women Caring for the Land program, it was to bring women together to talk about what they'd really like to do with their land and how they could go about and make that happen. And so many women want to have families on the land, which is new families coming into agriculture has been a thing of the past until recently with the beginning farmer movement. But there's women who really want to give the best they can back to their community, and sometimes it's through their access to their land. And in fact, right now I'm involved with an emerging land trust that we've started in Iowa, and we just started, we announced our beginning in January, and we have several farms that are being donated, and the goal of the land trust is to keep land in food production, to keep it in food production, and to keep it accessible for beginning farmers. So what that means is that the cost of the land, when a farmer begins farming, it's if you don't marry into it, if you're not born into it, or whether land is extremely expensive, and there are very few ways of getting into purchasing land. So this land trust is purchasing land or taking donated land and keeping it in a trust, and then leasing it out to beginning farmers. And we have a criteria of sustainable practices. So each sustainable practice that is included in the farm, there's a reduction in the lease, in the price of the lease, in the cost of the lease. So it's taking that huge expense of land out of the equation of getting beginning farmers started. And many women are interested in this. Recently a woman said that this was the answer to her dream. She said she wants to die knowing that her neighbors won't get her land. and
oh, how amazing,
it's just,
amazing.
yeah, it
and
is.
So, and then your women landowner outreach programs, they're really empowering these women who own 50% of this land to keep it, to have a voice in how that land is farmed, and then to participate in these trusts. That's another avenue of keeping that sustainability in the land and keeping it in food supply, in food production. That's really, you're doing really good work.
Well, I'm just a participant with so many others. It's just, I'm really glad to be, being able to be a part of all of this that's happening, and to be here for those young people that are the beginning farmers that are coming into farming, to encourage them, because it's not an easy life, but it's a very satisfying life. I can't think of doing anything else with my life. So.
I don't think there is an easy life. Every woman I know is working so hard. Whatever we choose to do, I think we're all working very hard at it.
Yes.
And I think that's a good thing, and we're seeing the results in the world. It's changing. Are you optimistic about farming in the United States and about women in agriculture?
I'm pretty optimistic. I get angry from time to time, and in the last couple of days I've been sort of trying to keep my anger at bay, and that's with the results of the two reports that have just come out with genetically altered crops, is that, they're linking it to cancer, of course, and they're linking it to antibiotic resistance, and those are two huge things that are going on in our world, and it's things that my husband and I and many other people have been fighting for years about the hormones in the food and antibiotics and that, and now they're coming out with scientific proof, and it's just I get so angry because we've been used as guinea pigs in this. Like, companies say, oh, it's okay, and of course they own Washington, D.C. and all the politicians, so the politicians agree with them, so they write big checks for their campaigns, and we really have to. The hard work ahead of us is returning to a democracy. We have an oligarchy right now, and it's just and every day you see the statistics about so few people own all the wealth, and that has to be reversed. But the young people that I know, the people that are really involved in agriculture and in feminism and that, seem to have a handle on that and a good analysis of that, and are going to be working hard to make that change. And so I do feel optimistic. I have to feel optimistic, because it's just, otherwise I think it would be too depressing.
Well, and I think that science is coming around to women's way of thinking, and hopefully it's going to continue. Science, good science, and consumer pressure. Yes. And women farmers, and I think we're going to be fine.
Good. I'm glad to hear you say that.
I know. I think we have to keep that good news coming as well as the hard things. So
absolutely,
keep that balance. Yes. Well, we thank you very much, Denise O'Brien, for your stories and your wisdom and your commitment to raising women's voices in agriculture. We are glad that you joined us again. Thank you very, very much.
Oh, you're welcome, Jenny, and take care now.
All right, thank you. I know you have a meeting to go to, so we'll say goodbye to you.
All right, bye-bye now. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye. And you can learn more about Denise's work at WFAN.org. That's for the Women, Food, and Agriculture Network. It's WFAN.org. And for the Women Landowner Outreach, please check out womencaringfortheland.org. That's womencaringfortheland.org. And WFAN is supported by donations from people like you and I, who are passionate about creating food systems and communities that are healthy, just, sustainable, and promote environmental integrity. And you can click on their Support Us page and find out more about making a donation. There's also a link to their Plate to Politics program, and you'll want to sign up for WFAN's quarterly newsletter and monthly e-bulletins, with announcements, news, and events, just to stay on top of the news in women in agriculture. And also, they have a blog with book reviews, program updates, and sign-ups. Their whole website is really a wealth of interesting information. And I have a quote here from Denise, and she says that my life has been devoted to raising women's voices in agriculture. My dream is that the landscape of industrialized agriculture will change as women become the decision makers on their land. To that end, I will devote my time on this earth to women, prairie restoration, and seed saving. Denise speaks at conferences and events on topics like women in agriculture, policy, organic agriculture, practical approaches to organic farming, women's relationships to the land, sustainable living, food security, and international perspectives on women in agriculture. Our thanks again to Denise O'Brien, and thank you for listening in. We hope we have informed and inspired you in many ways. And we hope you will try to catch more of the interviews in this series on feminism and sustainability, as well as our other podcast series on issues important to us as women. And please share these interviews with your family and friends. You never know who you may be inspiring. No matter what your description or experience of feminism is, we hope we have heightened your understanding of feminism's important role in all aspects of sustainability and restored and strengthened your resolve to build alliances for the future. For it is clear that none of us are alone. Keep listening. Bye for now.